Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something profound. The mechanics of hate, but maybe more importantly, how you actually dismantle it.
Yeah, we're looking at this incredible story, almost like a human experiment in real time. It's about the de-radicalization of, well, one of America's most prominent neo-Nazis.
And not through force or shouting matches, but through, believe it or not, conversation and empathy.
Right. We're focusing on the work of Daryl Davis. He's a black musician, quite renowned, and he's been driven by this question he's had since he was about 10 years old.
A really simple but powerful one. How can you hate me? You don't even know me.
And he didn't just ponder it. He's acted on it for decades. The sources say he's responsible for over 200 people leaving the KKK and similar groups.
Which is staggering. But today, our focus is really sharp. It's on his relationship with Jeff Schoep.
And Schoep wasn't just some rank-and-file member. He was the leader, the national commander of the National Socialist Movement, the NSM. For almost 30 years, this was arguably the biggest neo-Nazi group in the U.S.
So understanding how Davis managed to reach him.
Yeah.
That's understanding the strategy. We need to grasp just how solid that wall of hate was before Davis started chipping away.
Exactly. This dive is really our shortcut to seeing how powerful things like curiosity, empathy, just basic human connection can be against deeply entrenched ideology.
Okay, so let's start with the actual meeting. Where does this interaction begin?
Well, it wasn't some, high-level negotiation. They first properly met in 2016. It was for a documentary, Accidental Courtesy.
And the setting.
Almost comically mundane, Chris's Hot Dogs, a local joint in Alabama.
Wow. Major ideological showdown over chili dogs.
Okay.
And Schoep knew who Davis was.
Oh, absolutely. Davis had this reputation within the movement. They knew he was the guy who could talk people out. He was, in their eyes, maybe the most dangerous person they could engage with because he dismantled their arguments just by talking.
So Schoep must have gone in with his guard way up.
You'd think so, but this is where Davis's approach starts working immediately. Initially, Schoep was actually surprised. They were just chatting, getting along.
About what?
Music, mainly. Turns out Schoep used to be a singer in a rock and roll band, long hair and everything, so they found this common ground.
Okay, but wait. That must have triggered some serious internal conflict for Schoep. He's the leader of this hate group, and he's enjoying a conversation with the quote-unquote enemy.
Exactly. The cognitive dissonance hit hard. He clearly felt he had to pull back, reestablish who he was, put the wall back up.
How do you do that?
He literally pounded his fist on the table, declared something like, "I'll fight to the last bullet for my people." He was performing his role, trying to force a confrontation.
Trying to get the reaction he expected, right? Anger, argument.
Precisely. But Davis didn't bite. This is the core of his strategy, what he calls relational dialogue. He just stayed calm, didn't escalate, didn't argue back. He just kept the conversation going.
That non-reaction must have been incredibly disorienting for Schoep.
Totally. Extremists often expect hostility. It confirms their worldview that everyone outside the group is an enemy who will attack them. When Davis refused to play that part, it threw Schoep off balance psychologically. The fight he expected, the one that would justify his stance, just didn't happen.
So that calmness wasn't just about avoiding a fight. It actually created an opening. It lowered Schoep's defenses.
Yes, it seems so. It made Schoep curious. Why wasn't this man fighting back? Why wasn't he hostile? And Davis used that moment. Not with political arguments or statistics. He shared personal stories. He talked about his own experiences with racism, like things that happened to him as a kid in the Cub Scouts, just sharing his personal hurt.
And that connected.
It really did. Schoep admitted much later that hearing those stories, quote, really hurt because it wasn't abstract anymore. It showed him that his ideology, this thing he saw as a noble, grand cause, was causing real personal pain to actual human beings sitting across from him.
That's the first crack in the wall, then. That seed of doubt planted through shared humanity, not argument.
Yeah. And to really get why that seed took root, we need to understand the ground it fell on. Schoep wasn't born into this. His path into the NSM, into Nazism, it was learned behavior over a long time.
The sources mention his fascination started really young, like 4th grade. Partly admiring his grandfather who fought in Hitler's army.
Right. But importantly, he wasn't raised in a household filled with hate. He wasn't, like, indoctrinated by his parents. He actually sought the movement out himself as a teenager.
In Minnesota, right. And this was pre-easy internet. He apparently found the NSM by writing letters to addresses he found in a sociology textbook.
Yeah, he actively pursued it. And when he joined at 18, it wasn't just some loose group of angry guys. The NSM was serious business. It saw itself as the successor to George Lincoln Rockwell's American Nazi Party.
It's highly structured.
Very, almost military-like. Ranks, uniforms, paramilitary training schedules, even a vetting process for new members. It was designed to be encompassing.
And isolating. The sources mention things like mandatory meetings, required reading Mein Kampf, Henry Ford's The International Jew, stuff like that, and even non-disclosure agreements.
Absolutely. It was all built to create an echo chamber, to replace the members' outside reality with the movement's reality. Your whole world becomes the ideology.
Which makes it incredibly hard for outside information, like Davis's personal stories, to get through that filter, right?
Yep.
Gets twisted or dismissed by the ideology.
Yeah, exactly. It creates this closed loop, which makes what happened when Schoep was 19 even more significant.
The doxing incident. He was using an alias, Jeff Stevens, partly to protect his family, maybe his music career too.
Yes. And he got outed live on a radio show, his real name, his identity, all exposed.
You'd think that public shame, that pressure, would make someone run for the hills. Leave the movement.
For many, maybe. But for Schoep, it had the opposite effect. The fear, the shame, maybe the feeling of having burned his bridges, it pushed him deeper in. He doubled down, became even more committed to justify what it was costing him.
And the cost was huge, especially for his family. His mother was an attorney running for judge in Minnesota.
Yeah, and the governor basically told her that having a son who was a high-profile neo-Nazi, plus a father who fought for Hitler, it made her unsuitable for the bench. She lost her bid.
Just devastating. It really shows how the consequences of hate ripple outwards, affecting everyone connected to the person involved.
So Schoep's journey out wasn't like flipping a switch. It was slow, painful, filled with contradiction. What's really striking is that he was starting to de-radicalize, internally questioning things, while he was still the leader of the NSM.
Imagine that internal conflict. Leading a movement you're starting to fundamentally disagree with. That's textbook cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely massive dissonance. And you see it in his actions during that time. He tried to, reform the movement from within.
How? What did he try to change?
He tried rebranding, pushing the idea that the NSM was a white civil rights organization, trying to soften the image. He even temporarily swapped the swastika for a different symbol, a runic one, hoping it would be less toxic.
But it sounds like he eventually realized that was futile.
Yeah, he summed it up later by saying he was just putting lipstick on a pig. You can't fix something that's rotten at its core, that's fundamentally built on hate, just by changing the packaging.
And Daryl Davis wasn't the only outside influence chipping away at him during this time, was he?
No, that's important too. He had other non-adversarial contacts. The sources mention a Muslim filmmaker, Dia Khan, who used a really similar approach to Davis, just listening, asking questions, showing humanity.
So it was a cumulative effect.
Yeah.
Multiple people showing him the human cost of his ideology, the humanity in the other.
Right. And eventually, the internal conflict became too much. He left the NSM in 2019 and publicly denounced it.
And the impact of him leaving the leader was huge, wasn't it?
Massive. Hundreds of members apparently followed him out, people who saw him as their commander, their guide. His departure significantly shrank the NSM.
But leaving isn't the end of the story. There's the whole process of reintegration, dealing with the past.
And that's incredibly difficult. Schoep speaks very openly about the crushing shame and guilt he carries every single day. And they're practical problems, too. He literally asks, how do you put National Socialist leader for 27 years on a job application?
Finding purpose, finding work, just finding a place in normal society again must be a monumental challenge.
It is, and Davis really stresses this point. People leaving these groups need support. If they're just left isolated, swinging in the wind, as Davis puts it, the risk of them drifting back to extremism or finding a new extremist group is really high. They need a new community, a new purpose.
There's also the stigma, right? The label sticks. The media often refers to him as former neo-Nazi Jeff Schoep. That past identity is hard to shake.
It is, which makes what he's doing now even more remarkable.
Working with Jewish organizations.
Yes. Schoep, who spent decades spewing anti-Semitic hatred, now works with groups like the Simon Wiesenthal Center. He speaks at synagogues.
That is quite the turnaround. And the sources say the Jewish community has actually been the most welcoming.
He says they have. The very people he vilified the most have shown him the most acceptance after he left. It's a powerful illustration, isn't it? Where his old life offered only isolation and hate, this new path, facilitated by acceptance, offers a chance at belonging and maybe redemption.
So if we drill down, what's the core fuel for these hate groups? Why do people get drawn in? Davis argues it boils down to one thing.
Fear. Specifically, the fear among some white people of being replaced, of losing their identity, their majority status.
This is often linked to demographic predictions, right? Like the U.S. Census projections about the white population becoming a minority sometime between 2045 and 2050.
Exactly. That perceived threat gets twisted into this narrative of white genocide. It's the fear behind those chants you hear, like, you will not replace us.
And these groups are pretty strategic about how they recruit and spread that fear, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. Historically, they were known to deliberately provoke violence at rallies, like one in D.C. in the 80s. Why? To get news footage.
Footage they could then use as propaganda.
Yes. Propaganda allegedly showing that Zoda, the so-called Zionist-occupied government, was attacking them, proof that the system was against them and they needed to fight back.
And the recruitment tactics today, still structured.
Very much so. Sources say they actively target military veterans and former law enforcement, especially those who served for shorter periods.
Why them specifically?
They want the training, the tactical skills, the discipline, the familiarity with weapons. It fits into their narrative of preparing for RAHOA. It's their shorthand for racial holy war. That's the end game for many of these groups.
It really underscores the point you made earlier. This hate is learned. It's adopted. It's not innate.
Right. Davis uses a great analogy. A tiger doesn't choose its stripes, it's born with them. But a Klansman's robe or a Nazi swastika, that's attire. It's put on, it's learned behavior.
And if it's learned,
it can be unlearned. Or, maybe better put, replaced with something healthier. And this is where Davis's practical strategy comes in. Through all his years of doing this, talking to extremists all over the world, he boiled it down to 5 core things that he argues every human being wants.
Okay, let's lay these out. These aren't just feel-good ideas. This is his actual toolkit for finding common ground.
Right. Number 1, everyone wants to be loved. 2, everyone wants to be respected. 3, everyone wants to be heard.
Okay, love, respect, heard.
4, everyone wants to be treated fairly and truthfully. And 5, everyone wants the same things: love, respect, fairness, being heard for their family.
That second one, respect, feels key and potentially controversial when you're talking about someone spouting hate.
It is, and Davis is very clear about the distinction. He's not saying you have to respect the hateful ideology itself, absolutely not. He's saying you respect the person's right to hold that opinion, even if it's abhorrent, and you respect their basic humanity as a person.
So if someone's wearing a swastika, he respects their right to stand there and express that view, but he doesn't respect the swastika or what it represents.
Exactly. It's a fine line, but it's crucial. He's granting them the basic human dignity of being listened to, of being treated like a person first, ideology second.
And by doing that, by offering that basic respect and willingness to listen, you avoid attacking their reality directly. You sort of invite them to consider a different one.
Precisely. You stop trying to force them to change, and instead you offer observations, you share your own humanity, you plant those seeds. That simple act of listening, of respecting their right to speak, creates the opening. So the big takeaway here, for you, the listener, seems to be this. You rarely change someone's mind, especially a deeply held belief, by attacking it head-on. Telling someone their reality is wrong, particularly aggressively, usually just makes them dig their heels in deeper.
Right. Resistance flares up. But Davis's approach, this relational dialogue, it offers different perceptions. He shows up as a human being, not an enemy stereotype. He shares his own experiences.
And if those alternative perceptions, like seeing the enemy as a fellow human who enjoys music, or understanding the personal pain caused by racism, if those resonate more strongly than the old hateful narrative, the person themselves feels compelled to adjust their own reality to lessen that internal conflict, that dissonance.
It's about enabling them to make the change, which leads to Davis's broader philosophy, something he encourages everyone to adopt.
Yeah, he calls it being pro-human. Instead of always defining ourselves by what we're against, anti-racist, anti-fascist, anti-whatever, focus on what you're for.
Being pro-human, how does that shift things?
It reframes the conversation. You lead with a positive, unifying vision. It forces the opponent, if you will, to react to your frame instead of you constantly reacting to and defending against their negative one.
And you don't have to be Daryl Davis sitting down with a Klan leader to do this.
Not at all. He emphasizes that everyone has a role. Find where you're comfortable. On the back line, sideline, or online, as he puts it. Contribute in the way that suits you towards that common goal of fostering a more connected, understanding, pro-human world.
So ultimately, what this deep dive shows us, I think, is that shielding ourselves from bad ideas, trying to censor them or pretend they don't exist, might not be the best defense.
It seems not. The better defense is probably confronting them, not necessarily with hostility, but with better ideas, clearer articulation, and crucially, the capacity for nuance and genuine human connection.
Trusting that when people are genuinely exposed to empathy, to thoughtful dialogue, to shared humanity, they can often distinguish the hateful, flawed ideology from the healthier alternative themselves.
Developing that critical thinking, both in ourselves and others, maybe that's the real path forward. Building a world where hate, because it's learned, finds fewer and fewer places to take root.
A powerful thought to end on.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.